A young king kneels under the night sky. The stars glitter like diamonds scattered across eternity, and the air is still with divine anticipation. He has inherited a throne of immense responsibility, a nation looking to him for guidance, armies awaiting his command, and wealth at his fingertips. Yet in this moment, he feels the weight of his youth pressing upon him. He does not ask for riches, nor for victory over his enemies, nor for a long life of pleasure. Instead, his voice trembles as he whispers into the heavens, "Give your servant an understanding heart to govern your people, and to discern between good and evil." This is the story of Solomon, the son of David, the king who could have asked for anything, but chose wisdom. His prayer was unlike any prayer uttered by a monarch before him, and God answered it in ways the world had never seen. His wisdom became legendary, his reign unmatched in justice, and his story eternal. The scriptures, the Quran, the Bible, and the Torah, all testify to the brilliance of his judgment, the humility of his heart, and the miracles that surrounded his life. But what truly made Solomon unforgettable was not his wealth or his palaces, but his choice to value wisdom above all else. Today, we step into the courts of ancient Jerusalem, walk beside the king who ruled with justice, and witness the divine hand that guided his every decision. Stay with us, because this journey will reveal how wisdom is the greatest treasure of all. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe, so you never miss the sacred stories that continue to shape our lives. The throne room of Jerusalem was still heavy with the memory of David, the mighty king who had united tribes, conquered giants, and penned psalms that still echoed through the streets. But now, the crown rested on the head of his son, Solomon, a young man whose heart beat with both fear and hope. The people looked to him, their new ruler, wondering if he could carry the weight of his father's legacy. Solomon was not the oldest son of David, nor the most obvious heir. His path to the throne had been marked by tension and uncertainty. Yet it was God's plan that he would sit upon the throne of Israel, and through him, a different kind of greatness would shine, not the greatness of conquest, but of wisdom. The Bible in 1 Kings tells us, Solomon loved the Lord, walking in the statutes of David his father. The Quran also honors him as a prophet, a king, and a servant given knowledge and judgment by God. From the very beginning, Solomon's reign was meant to be different. One night, as he stood in the quiet sanctuary, Solomon felt the full weight of his calling pressing upon him. The golden lampstands flickered, their light dancing against the carved walls of the temple. In that holy silence, God appeared to him in a dream and offered him a choice: ask for whatever you want me to give you. Imagine the power of that moment, a young king, given the chance to ask the Almighty for anything. Riches, armies, victory, long life, glory. All could have been his. But Solomon's heart was different. His prayer was not selfish. With humility trembling in his voice, he answered, "I am only a little child and do not know how to carry out my duties. Give your servant a discerning heart to govern your people and to distinguish between right and wrong." That request changed everything. According to Scripture, God was deeply pleased. In the Bible, the words are clear, "Because you have asked for this and not for long life or wealth for yourself. I will give you a wise and discerning heart, so that there will never have been anyone like you, nor will there ever be." The Quran echoes this blessing, reminding us that God granted Solomon a kingdom and wisdom unlike any before him. That night, beneath the silence of heaven, Solomon's destiny was sealed. He would become a king unlike any the world had ever seen. His wisdom would not simply guide courts of justice, it would shape history, inspire nations, and reveal to humanity that true strength lies not in armies, but in understanding. From that moment, the young king's journey had begun. A journey that would take him from the quiet of prayer to the grandeur of palaces, from the simple plea of a humble heart to the roar of a kingdom blessed by God's hand. The sun rose over Jerusalem, casting its golden glow upon the stone walls and crowded marketplaces. Word had already spread, the young king was different. He did not boast of his armies or sit in arrogance upon his throne. Instead, Solomon was approachable, his face calm, his voice gentle, yet his eyes carried a depth that made even the elders pause. People whispered, "Is this truly David's son?" The Lord must have touched his heart. The moment that would define him came quickly. One morning, two women were brought before the throne. Their faces were etched with desperation, their cries echoed through the royal hall. They both carried the same claim, each insisted that a single infant boy belonged to her. No witnesses, no proof. Just grief, pain, and accusation. The court fell silent, waiting for their young king to pass judgment. This was no ordinary case. It was a test, not of law, but of discernment. Any ruler could guess. A powerful king could simply decide by force. But what Solomon did next stunned the nation. The Bible in 1 Kings 3 records his words, "Bring me a sword," the king commanded. Gasps rippled through the hall as a soldier stepped forward with a gleaming blade. Solomon looked at the women, his voice unwavering, "Cut the living child in two and give half to one and half to the other." The crowd recoiled in horror. Was this wisdom, or madness? But then, the truth revealed itself. One woman cried out, "No, my lord. Give the baby to her, only do not kill him." The other remained cold, saying, "Let him be neither mine nor yours, but divide him." In that instant, Solomon's eyes shone with understanding. He pointed to the first woman, "She is the mother. Give the child to her." And the hall erupted in awe. The scriptures say, when all Israel heard of the judgment, they stood in awe of the king, because they saw that the wisdom of God was in him. The Quran also portrays Solomon as one granted insight into judgment, a servant whom God blessed with the ability to discern truth from falsehood. And in the Torah, the story echoes as a testimony to divine wisdom working through human leadership. This one judgment traveled across the land faster than any army could march. Traders whispered it in markets, shepherds repeated it in the fields, and mothers told it to their children as a story of hope. Israel knew, their king was not just sitting on David's throne, he was chosen, gifted, and empowered by God himself. But this was only the beginning. With each passing day, disputes came before him. Merchants argued over debts, neighbors over land, families over inheritance. And each time, Solomon's words carried a clarity that seemed almost otherworldly. He was not simply solving problems, he was revealing the very justice of heaven. From the highest noble to the poorest laborer, all saw the same truth, their king's wisdom was not his own. It was a gift, and it was reshaping their nation the years past, and Solomon's wisdom did not fade, it grew. From the narrow streets of Jerusalem to the farthest corners of the desert, his fame spread like wildfire. What began as whispers in the markets soon became proclamations in royal courts beyond Israel's borders. Kings, queens, and merchants spoke of a ruler whose understanding surpassed the greatest sages, a man whose words carried the very breath of the divine. Under Solomon, Israel flourished like never before. Fields yielded rich harvests, trade routes pulsed with caravans, and Jerusalem itself transformed into a beacon of prosperity. Gold and cedar wood, rare spices and silks from distant lands, all flowed into the city. The people, once hardened by battles in David's time, now lived in an era of peace. Their sons tilled the land, their daughters sang by the vineyards, and their king presided over it all with unmatched clarity. The scriptures describe this age as the pinnacle of Israel's glory. In 1 Kings 4, it is written, God gave Solomon wisdom and very great insight, and a breadth of understanding as measureless as the sand on the seashore. His knowledge spanned beyond law and judgment. He spoke of nature, of animals, of plants, of the mysteries of creation itself. Scholars gathered to listen, scribes recorded his sayings, and seekers marveled at his parables. And the Quran affirms this gift, Solomon was granted wisdom, knowledge, and understanding beyond his years. He could discern the language of creatures, even the subtle communication of birds and ants, a sign of divine favor, a reminder that the King of Israel ruled not just men but lived in harmony with the creation of God. Then came the day when Solomon's wisdom drew the attention of one of the greatest rulers of his age, the Queen of Sheba. Her kingdom, rich in wealth and power, heard of Solomon's brilliance and questioned whether the tales were exaggerated. She resolved to test him herself. With a caravan stretching as far as the eye could see, laden with treasures, she journeyed to Jerusalem. The moment she entered Solomon's court, she saw not only the splendor of his palace but the order, justice, and serenity that flowed through every chamber. His throne was a masterpiece, his officials dignified, and his people content. When she posed her questions, riddles crafted to confound even the wisest minds, Solomon answered them with ease. There was no arrogance in his replies, only a quiet confidence, as if the answers did not come from him but through him. The queen, overwhelmed, declared that the half of his greatness had never been told. What she saw with her own eyes surpassed every story she had heard. She confessed that Solomon's wisdom, his governance, and his devotion to God were unlike anything in the world. From that day, nations recognized that Israel's strength was not in its armies, but in the wisdom that God had poured into its king. And Solomon, though surrounded by wealth and power, never forgot that his greatest treasure was not gold or silver, but understanding, a gift from the Almighty. At the height of Solomon's reign, when peace filled the land and prosperity adorned every household, the young king set his heart on a project unlike any the world had ever seen, the building of the temple of God. For centuries, the Ark of the Covenant, the sacred chest containing the tablets given to Moses, had traveled with the Israelites, dwelling in tents and temporary sanctuaries. But Solomon, remembering his father David's desire, resolved to build a permanent house for the Almighty, a sanctuary where heaven and earth would meet. The vision was staggering. Thousands of workers were gathered, stonecutters hewed massive blocks from the quarries, and cedars were shipped across the seas from Lebanon. Craftsmen of unmatched skill shaped gold, silver, and bronze into vessels of worship. The very air in Jerusalem was filled with the sound of hammers, chisels, and chants as generations of prayers began to take form in stone. The Bible describes it in 1 Kings 6, the temple that King Solomon built for the Lord was 60 cubits long, 20 wide, and 30 high. He overlaid the inside with pure gold, and he partitioned off the inner sanctuary to set there the Ark of the Covenant. The walls glittered with precious metals, the floors gleamed with polished stone, and carved cherubim stretched their wings as if to guard the holy space. The Quran also honors this moment, recognizing Solomon as one entrusted with great responsibility and as a servant of God whose power was rooted in faith. This temple was not merely a monument of wealth, it was a testament of devotion. A reminder that the greatness of Israel's king was measured not by his palaces but by his willingness to exalt the name of the Almighty. When at last the day of dedication arrived, all Israel gathered in awe. Priests carried the ark into the Holy of Holies, and as they placed it beneath the wings of the cherubim, a cloud descended. The scriptures describe it as the glory of the Lord filling the temple so heavily that the priests could not even stand to minister. It was as if heaven itself had touched earth. Solomon then stood before his people, lifting his hands toward the heavens. His prayer was not for conquest or fame but for mercy and forgiveness. He asked that whenever his people sinned and turned back with repentant hearts, God would hear them from his dwelling place. And his voice echoed through the courts, "But will God really dwell on earth? The heavens, even the highest heavens, cannot contain you. How much less this temple I have built?" In that moment, the people understood, the true strength of their nation was not the size of their walls, nor the wealth of their treasuries, but the presence of God in their midst. The Temple of Solomon stood as one of the greatest wonders of the ancient world. But beyond its beauty, it symbolized the eternal truth, that the heart of worship is not stone and gold, but humility, obedience, and the desire for God's presence above all else. As the years passed, Solomon's reign reached heights that few rulers in human history could ever imagine. His wisdom became a beacon that drew kings, queens, and scholars from every corner of the earth. Among the most famous of these visitors was the Queen of Sheba, a monarch from a distant and wealthy kingdom. The scriptures tell us in 1 Kings 10 that she had heard tales of Solomon's unmatched wisdom and the prosperity of his people. Yet she doubted. So, she came to Jerusalem, bringing caravans of gold, spices, and precious stones, determined to test this king with hard questions. The air must have been heavy with expectation as she entered the courts of Solomon's palace, the place where cedar beams, golden vessels, and intricate carvings all testified to the wealth of a ruler unlike any other. One by one, she presented her riddles, her challenges, her inquiries about the mysteries of life and governance. And one by one, Solomon answered, not with arrogance, but with clarity that pierced through the heart. The Queen of Sheba was stunned. As the Bible records, she confessed, "The report I heard in my own country about your achievements and your wisdom is true. But I did not believe it until I came and saw with my own eyes. Indeed, not even half was told me. In wisdom and wealth you have far exceeded the report I heard." The Quran also honors Solomon as one blessed with divine insight, a prophet whose authority stretched beyond men, even over the winds, the jinn, and the birds of the sky. This divine wisdom was not just for judgment or governance but a sign that true understanding comes from God alone. Yet Solomon's greatness was never meant to be measured only in palaces, gold, or fame. His life stood as a testimony that when a leader chooses understanding over power, and faith over pride, the entire nation flourishes. His reign was marked not by endless wars but by peace, prosperity, and a pursuit of knowledge that lifted his people higher. But the story of Solomon is also a caution. For as wisdom can elevate, pride can destroy. The scriptures remind us that the heart must remain anchored to God, for wealth and knowledge without humility are fragile. The later years of Solomon's reign carried whispers of compromise, of divided loyalties, of the dangers that come when blessings are taken for granted. And so, his story leaves us with an eternal lesson: wisdom is not simply knowing what is right, but choosing it consistently, even when the world tempts us otherwise. True greatness lies not in building kingdoms that time will eventually erode, but in building a heart that remains faithful to the Almighty. Solomon, the king who asked not for riches or power but for understanding, still calls out across the ages, "Seek wisdom above all things, for with wisdom comes peace, justice, and a life that reflects the divine." And so, the story of Solomon closes like a golden sunset, majestic, radiant, yet filled with lessons that echo through eternity. He was not remembered merely for palaces glittering with gold or a kingdom overflowing with wealth. His true legacy was wisdom, a wisdom that taught humanity that justice, compassion, and understanding are treasures far greater than silver or stone. From the Quran to the Bible, from the Torah to the teachings passed through generations, Solomon's name is always tied to one eternal truth: when you seek understanding, you align your heart with the will of God. His throne may have turned to dust, his kingdom scattered by time, but the light of his wisdom still burns bright, guiding those who search for meaning in a world drowning in noise. And now, the question turns to us. Will we chase after the fleeting power of this world, or will we, like Solomon, kneel in humility and ask for a heart that understands? This is more than just history. It is a living call, to parents raising children, to leaders guiding nations, to every soul searching for peace. True wisdom does not die. It shapes generations. If this story stirred something within you, then join us on this journey. Subscribe now, and become part of a community that seeks not just to hear stories, but to live their lessons. For the path of wisdom is not walked alone, it begins here, with us, together.